looks like this. I wanted to pick back up on when I talked a little bit about in the other classes about where you should start on a part, which will go into the actual lecture for the part tonight. This part, what's the main body on this part? What would you start with here?
Side view.
This view here?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which you wouldn't believe, that a lot of people don't start with that. They would start with this. Now, the only reason I say this is the best place to start, once again, it's the biggest part of the model. And that gives you the best success at doing anything you're going to do with part bodies. This part here, there's no question about it, what the base is basically the starting point for this.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I want to talk about and go through, which is a little more difficult, is this this part right here. Okay. Now, I'll show you the CATIA model. Now, as you can see, this was a step file that I imported. That's why there's no branches underneath it. So you can see the shape of the part. What do you think is the best body for that one? You know, the main body of that. Yeah, you could be right. This piece in the middle is probably a good place to start, but this shape itself, it lends itself very well. There's a command in CATIA called a multi-section solid, and that's exactly what this piece in the middle is very powerful at doing. If you look at this part, a lot of people that don't want to use multi-section solid, they try and build this part, and it's extremely difficult to build like this. The reason is, if you look at it, you say, oh, I see, right here, I see this is going to be a pad, this is going to be a pad, and then the center is going to be a pad and 2 cylinders. The issue is, you got to get, this one in the front's not hard, it's planar, okay? The one in the back goes at an angle, and if you look at it down here, it comes in tangent, and it's basically right on this edge. If you build one like this, unless you push it along like the X value, it's gonna come up like this. So when you look at this part, you say, okay, well, I could probably build that with, I'll do those as pads, and then I'll do this other piece at the in the center and subtract it out. This multi-section solid is definitely the tool to use for this, and I want to go through that command and show you how you actually build this part. And then I will obviously pass out the assignments. This part, though, it takes a little bit of, the reason you got to kind of develop this part, but use the command, is if you look at this shape, this probably isn't the best color. Okay, so if you look at this shape, what most people do, the mistake that they make when they're trying to build this, even when they're doing a multi-section solid, is basically this shape becomes tangent here and here, and a lot of people will model this, and they'll say, okay, I've got this bottom piece, and I've got this top cylinder up here, and let's say this is the center line for the top, and the bottom on this part is down here. It's a little bit below the part. So the first thing that they do is they say, oh, okay, I'm going to put a line from this point down to this point. They do that, and then what happens is they're not really tangent. They're on these 2 points, okay? So at the top, it's foreshortened, and at the bottom, you're overshooting this piece. So the idea of going in and doing the initial construction of this is, as you can see, it becomes tangent lower than that top circle, and it becomes tangent here above this point. So it's gonna basically become tangent up here and come down into this part. And the same goes for the rear shape, but when you do it as a multi-section solid, it's a lot easier because we're gonna go in and build it with two shapes to get this, I'll call this landing point here, and then what this landing point is here. So it's a very powerful command. It's just on this part, you need to do a little bit of development work to begin with, to lay this out, to get it to work correctly. So let me show you the actual part. So the whole idea behind this is up here, we're gonna build a shape that looks like an I-beam. And then on the bottom, we're gonna build another shape that looks like a bigger I-beam. So if you look at this in the, if you're looking straight down on this part and you look at this, one of those, we'll call this the upper one, because I think, yeah, the upper one's the smaller of the two. So if you're looking at this, once you get it built, and you're looking straight down on the part, you're gonna have one like that, you're gonna sketch like that, and then you're gonna have another sketch that's gonna be basically the one at the bottom, that's gonna follow this all the way around, but it's probably gonna do a little bit more like this for the front of it. So it's gonna follow all this back to here. This will be the lower I-beam. And obviously, when you have a sketch, if you're looking at them both from the plan view, you won't see anything. You'll see these two sitting on top of each other. And then what happens is when you connect those two together, it stretches them out, and it also creates this shape that you need for this part, which makes it, there's a little bit of development work up front, but to try and do this by using pads is very difficult. You gotta put a lot of planes on the part. You also have to go in and try and do a little bit of math to figure out exactly where the part's gonna be. So, with this part, go back over here. What I've done is I've actually, this part, remember this part's in English as well. So when you start up, make sure if you've been doing metric models, which those other two are, make sure that you switch over to English, because you might get halfway through the part and go, oh, I gotta switch over, or you'll go to try and put a fillet on it, and you'll say, well, this isn't working. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I wanna kind of define where, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up here and do it into a geoset just to figure out how I'm gonna lay the part out. So I'm gonna say defining work object, and obviously the geoset, I'm just gonna use it for reference right now as far as what I'm gonna construct. And let's see what the rest of my commands are. Definitely need line, point, and curve. A line and point. So with this, since I've defined up here, and what I wanna do is I wanna build this on a plane that is actually gonna mimic the way the isometric is drawn. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and create a sketch right here. And like I said, it's just gonna be for reference right now. The bottom of this part has a cylinder that starts out at, let's see, what is this? This thing is, so it's a diameter of 1.125, and the way this is set up, you come up 1/16 of an inch from that. So I'm gonna put an axis right here, and then I'm gonna offset this. I'll put a line in right here, and I'll mark that in. So what they're saying is basically with the bottom of this part, this is gonna be the bottom edge, even though this is the center of the circle. So I'm gonna go in here now. I wanna, because I'm using this to to give myself some measurements, I'm just gonna go in, I'm not gonna do anything right now with trimming anything back, because I'm not gonna really use any of these. The upper circle is 4 inches from this guy, so if I come over here and I put a circle in, somewhere over here, and I just dimension it, and it is from the center, let's see, no, it's from the bottom, so it's from this line to here, not from the center that I just gave you. So this is 4 inches. And the value of that one is 1 1/8. So this one right here is actually, this one's actually 1.125. This one up here is, so that's going to give me the setup for where these shapes actually lie, and I'll show you why that's important. Since I've got this constructed, the next thing that I'm going to do in the sketcher is I'm just going to put a line from here to here, and then I'm going to put another one on this side from here to here. And I'm going to go back in, because these shouldn't move now, I'm going to make this line, this one is going to become tangent with that. And then this one right here is going to become tangent with this. And I'll do the same thing with the other side. Remember, this is just the setup for what I'm going to do, and I need some values off this. Okay, so now you can see I've got these lines scribed. This is what I was talking about, where this actually lands. So there's a point right there off this, and then there's a point over here that's exactly at the same location horizontally. And then up here, you get the same thing going on where those become tangent. So I'm gonna go in here, and now that I know where those are at, those actual intersections, or where that becomes tangent, I'm gonna go in here and put an intersection point from here to here. And I'm gonna do one at the top as well. So that's from here to here. Actually, I'm gonna do this one on the other side. This one's not extended out. It is shown it is tangent, but I will do it from this side, because it makes sure that I'm going past the part. So there's that one, and this one should be right here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the measure command, and I'm actually going to measure from this plane right here, which is go from there to that point, this first point. So it's 0.156, okay, up from the plane. That's gonna be the first sketch. I'm gonna save that. And then I'm gonna measure from that second plane and see where that comes out at. And that one's 4.14. Let's say okay to that one. So I've got both of those saved. I'm going to go down here and exit this sketch. And the first thing I'm gonna do is build a sketch on this plane that represents that bottom cylinder. And I can either trim it now, or I can just come back later on and actually trim it. So just for the demo, I'll leave these as cylinders and show you what we're gonna do next. That's gonna be one body. I'm gonna exit that. I'm gonna insert another body. And I'm gonna call this, I'll call this middle structure. And then from there, I'm gonna insert another body. And this one, let's call that lower cylinder. Call this one upper cylinder. And then since I'm defining work object on that one, I'm gonna do another sketch. It's gonna be on that same plane. Now I know that I'm the right value out, or center value. So I want to make sure that I'm up the right value from the plane. And if you remember, it's 1.56 up to the bottom of the part, and then it's 4.14 from that. So I'm going to make sure that I'm up from here. 4.156. Okay. That doesn't look right there because it's off that one. So let me go back and do this. See what this is. 4.02. Oh, sorry. 1.56 is the tangency. So this is going to be 4.0625, I believe. 4.0625. Let's see what that looks like. That's right. There we go. So that, because that line's a 1/16 of an inch off this one. Okay, so that one's placed. It's not going anywhere. If I want to make sure that it doesn't move from side to side, right now it looks like it's concentric about this. It's got a value. I'll put an axis in here. And I'll make this coincident to it, but it should be locked. Let's see if it goes. Yeah, it's gonna go over constrained anyway, so this is good. So it shouldn't move. So now that I've got the upper one defined and the lower one defined, I'm gonna go back to this middle piece. And so let me exit this sketch. Before I do that, I'm gonna go back into the geometrical set and say define a work object. I'm gonna offset a plane, the first one. And if you hit plane, offset from plane, I'm gonna pick this one. And this first one is gonna be 0.156. Okay, so there's my first plane. Colored it something different there. And then the second one is going to be off that one, 4.14. This is important because this is where basically those tangencies are. And you're going to do a sketch on each one of those. So now if I go back to this view, everything should be, let me turn off. see if this looks like where it needs to be. Let me turn this sketch back on. Looks like this plane is where it needs to be based on those values. And this one looks like it's where it needs to be. So I'm going to exit that sketch. And I'm going to define and work object this middle structure. Or before I do that, let me do this. The lower cylinder on this is 3 inches, so I'm going to say define and work object. And I'm going to make a pad out of this. And I'm going to reverse the direction on that. And this is going to be 3. I'm going to define and work object the upper one. I'll show you why these are critical. And it gets right back to the sketcher as you use them as reference elements. Okay, so I'm going to do another pad with this one. This one is 2 inches, so okay, so you see I've got both of these defined. I'm going to go back to this define and work object, this middle structure. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to build a sketch. And if you want to, you can make these position sketches. Remember, I'm not in the middle of that cylinder. I'm up just a little bit because it's the upper one. Turn off this guy for now. I'll turn this off. Hide it. So if I cut the part in half, that's where I am right now. Okay, so that's that value, that 4.14. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch on this. So you go like this. I'm going to go normal this view. And since the front is the fronts both match and the back is a little bit different, you're going to see that what I made a sketch of on the board is going to be similar to this. I'm going to go into the this profile command, and I'm going to start. I'm just going to start to do a. Well, you know what? Before I even do that, let's do this.
Will you show me how you got your that 4.14 in to get halfway through that part?
So I build a plane, which is hidden. So there's my plane, right? And all I did was I'm going to build a sketch on that plane.
Okay.
So I'm still in this object. I'm going to pick that. It's going to put me right on. You're looking. The reason you don't see it cut in half is because I'm on that plane right now. But obviously, if I go like this, I can split apart exactly where the plane is. This thing under visualization, cut part by sketch plane. You may not have it turned on in your toolbars. This mine's turned on. So we need some reference elements, or we need some construction geometry out of this. What I'm going to do is, I'm already in this sketch. I'm going to go in and say insert operation 3D geometry, intersect 3D elements, and let's see if it takes the whole cylinder. Sometimes that's fine. The reason it gives you that is because you're on something that is a cylinder. Doesn't mean it's not going to be right. But I needed those, and I also need the front and back of this. So I'm going to hit Control, pick this one, say insert operation 3D geometry, intersect 3D elements. Say OK. There's the front and back. Now those will never move, those reference elements, unless you can go in and you can isolate them. Obviously, you're not gonna see them because they're construction elements right now when you leave the sketch. But the nice thing about those is if you build a sketch and you constrain it to that, when you change that sketch, the other sketch that's attached to it will change as well. If you don't want that to ever happen, you can right mouse click these, each one of them, and say, Mark II object, you go in here and you isolate it. And it basically breaks it from that solid, so it stands alone by itself. But because I don't really care that much about this, I'm gonna go back into the sketch. I want it to keep its relation. Now, I'm gonna go into the profile command, and I'm just gonna start to sketch. I need to be out of this. And this is a pretty easy sketch. When it wants to line things up from the other elements, make sure that you click where it's gonna line those up. That way you don't have to go back and screw around with trying to make sure that things aren't, that some of these edges aren't looking for the other side of the solid, like this one right here. I'm gonna finish it by going straight up. And I can see that obviously this one's gonna need to be trimmed. Let me show you what I'm gonna do with this sketch next. Trim this off. Now these should be, if you look on this, I should be coincident right now with this guy up here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is the value of these ribs is 5/16. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna put a value on this one and this one. So there's the first one, 0.313, and the back one is 313 as well. Now, if you look at this, you're like, oh, well, it looks like it's on that edge. Well, not necessarily, not yet. The center of this is actually 3/8. So I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna pick these two. I'm gonna type in 3/8. And then I'm going to make this point to here. So now, as you can see, it's constrained. Those two values are constrained. I'm not gonna put a total length on this. I do know it's 2 inches, but what I'm gonna do, rather than do that, is if you look, I'm off a little bit on this part. I'm gonna come back in here to the constraints command, and I'm gonna say I wanna take this one over to this, and I wanna make it coincident, okay? And it goes green. I'm gonna take this one, and I'm gonna bring it down to this reference line. I'm gonna say coincident. Pick that up. Let's do this. If you're in here and you're trying to do that to a line and it doesn't wanna pick it up, all you gotta do is, if I go in here now and I pick this white line and I make sure that I've got that, if I pick this face and I say coincident, that's the power of the solid side of it. And if you notice, because I had this value, these two went green. And then I'm gonna come around to the front, and I'm gonna make sure that this is where it's supposed to be. I know I picked that line and it looks like it's where it needs to be, but let's see. Okay. Now, on the edges here, you can see I'm coincident, because I did that down here at the bottom. and my line basically lined up with that one because when I was doing the sketch, I made sure that everything looked good. So now if I go to this view, there's that top sketch, right? So we're gonna do the same exact thing at the bottom, off the plane where it needs to be built. Okay, so, and the reason I said middle structure here, when you do a multi-section solid, they don't need to be in separate bodies. You can put them in separate bodies. The issue is when you go to build it, what'll happen is if there's a sketch in another body, it will make a copy of it. So multi-sections solids are probably one of the only ones where you can put multiple sketches in one body and it doesn't make any difference. Whereas when you're doing pads, pockets, other things, it's one sketch per feature, just so that it's what I would call a good modeling practice. So I'm still in that body, and I'm gonna go down here now and do the bottom sketch. Pick this plane. And one of the things I wanna do too is make sure we split this. Okay, so that looks like that's where the tangency is. Now, it looks a little bit different, obviously, because rather than splitting it the other direction, and it doesn't really make any difference because you're gonna overbuild this piece anyways, or you're gonna build it to the tangencies. So, I can take that off. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, I'm gonna turn this on. Let's say insert operation, 3D geometry, intersect 3D elements. I'm gonna pick this, say okay. I'm gonna pick the front and rear face, and then say insert operation, 3D geometry, intersect 3D elements. There's the front and back. Now, this is a little bit different because at the back, and you know what, I already forgot a step. Let me go back into this first sketch in here. There's a spacing. So, this plane, so this should be 313, but it's not coincident here. This value is, and I'm sure it's not going to bring this down. Delete this one. There's an offset value in this, so it's offset inward from the part. Here to here before I put the offset value in. And I'll just make sure that's horizontal, and then I'll trim those back. So let me trim this. Because your upper and lower cylinders on this, there's an offset from the edge. So this one still is 5/16. And then the offset on the front is 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to go from this to this. Okay, so there's the front offset. And this guy, there's where it lost its link. When I build the bottom one, I'll definitely pay more attention to that. Now this one, it's disconnected, so I'm going to go back and make it coincident. I'm going go from there, that point's a coincidence. Okay, so we're reconnected there. Let me see if I can delete this one. And if I can push this, there we go. Okay. And the bottom one is 1/8 of an inch as well. So I'll go from this line to this line now, and that one will be 0.125. Everything else is maintained. I got the 0.313 here, the 0.313, and then the center is 3/8. Okay, so I'm gonna exit that. I'm gonna go back to, you can see the shape up here. I'm gonna go into, make sure that I'm still in this body, and I'm gonna go into sketch 6 now. Okay, so I've already got what I need there. I will split this in half, and I can, did you notice when I split it, when I was at the top, it cut it from my view plane? When I was in an ISO, it cut it from the bottom up. So I'm gonna do the same thing with this one, except I'm gonna pay attention a little more this time. And go from here to here. And if you want to, you can actually project this sketch down in here. Doesn't really matter, because you're gonna use some of the same elements, I should say, but or you can just do it as a profile. And go back and put the values in that you need. Okay, so I'll do the first offset here. Okay, so there's that one. This value from here to here, 0.313. I hope this doesn't blow up. No.
Did you, are both the eyes in one sketch?
No, they're in two sketches. Well, they're in one body.
Their body? But
See?
Sketch 5 and sketch 6?
Yep, sketch 5 and sketch 6. And the only reason they should be is because, like I said, when you build a multi-section solid, you can put them in other bodies, but it'll just make a copy in the actual body that you're gonna build it in. And it's one of the only ones that isn't critical like some of the pads and pockets are. So I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna do my 0.125 on this one. Got that one. The center is now. If you notice too, when I was getting close to this to put a value in it, the one thing that CATIA will do is it'll recognize the solid body underneath it, and it wanted to put an axis right through the center of that cylinder, which is obviously true in any of the views, right? The center point. Now, since I've got this, I can dimension off this plane or I can dimension off this V. So I just need this value from here to that. It's gonna be 0.375/2. That one should be in position. Hopefully, looks like I'm coincident all the way around. Got a coincident marker there. So I should be good. The real test is gonna be when I build it, and I go to unite it to the top and bottom, how it looks. So it's fully constrained. If I go in and I look at the sketch, I got one profile that's closed. I don't have any little lines sticking out anywhere. So I don't have to worry about that one not being a good sketch. If I go back into sketch 5 and I do the analysis on it, I got one closed sketch. So I'm gonna exit this. Now, remember I created the lower cylinder, the middle structure, and the upper cylinder. And I'm not gonna do anything with any of the booleans right now, all right? And this is another one of those parts where I see a few students still just putting one body in, and they put all these features below it. This one, if you go back to build it and you don't basically put some of these in bodies, sometimes it'll get rid of half the solid. So that's another reason. So I'm just doing construction and I've got these bodies built. I'm gonna go back in now and I'm gonna do this multi-section solid. Now this one, if you look over in the tree, or if you look over in the toolbars, you can see that we've got, we got pad, pocket, shaft, this groove, hole, rib, slot, solid combined. Then down here we got this weird shape, multi-section solid. That's the positive. This one below it is the negative. So it's the pocket of a multi-section solid, if you wanted to build that. So I'm gonna pick this one, and this is where you gotta kind of pay attention to, because if you don't get this right. So what it's asking you for is, it says select a curve.
Okay, what I kind of choose for that, I'm sorry, I missed that.
You gotta really pay attention when you're in this command and what you're selecting. So it says select a curve. It means a sketch. I mean, you could have just a curve in here. So I'm gonna pick this, and if you notice, get into a view where you can kind of see. It's calling it section 1. It added sketch 5, which is number 1 to the tree, or to this dialog box, okay? If you look, there's a starting point, which is right here. There's the closing point right there. Okay, so closing point is on this edge. The start point is right here, and it doesn't even really have anything to do with where you started the sketch. It just momentarily picks an edge. Pay attention to the closing point, okay? Now, it says select a new curve, a support, surface, or closing point. Well, my closing point's where I want it, that's fine, okay? When you leave this, when you go in to select another sketch, it's very difficult to go back into this one. The reason it asks you for a closing point here is it's basically saying, do you want to change this? If you want to change it, do it now, or go into your next sketch. Well, I'm going to pick the next sketch right here. Okay. Now, if you look at this, look where the closing point is. Okay, it's down in the opposite corner. And if you look at the arrow, it's pointing this direction. All right, the direction up here, the arrow is pointing along this. Now, and it says here the same thing, basically. Select a new curve, a support surface, or a closing point. I can select 1,000 sections in here, and it'll keep telling me that. I'm done with this, but I'm going to preview it, and the reason I'm going to preview it is the closing points, you usually want those to line up, because when they don't, the solid will twist, okay? So I want to show you, since I got closing points that are on opposing corners, let me show you what happens. So there it is, it's twisted. Now I'm going to double click sketch 5, and it says select a support surface or modify the current section. Okay, well, I'm back up in here. I'm going to pick this corner and see if it'll let me change a closing point. See, I'm already out of that realm of editing. So I'm going to cancel this. That's why I said it's very important when you're in there to do your editing of the sketch or your. So now that I know the closing point's in this corner, I'm gonna pick this sketch again down here, and I'm gonna move the closing point. It says, select a new curve, a support surface, or a closing point. I'm gonna pick this corner right here. Now, my closing points, I believe, are in opposite directions, but let's see if I preview it, if it's gonna run. There it goes. Because sometimes you can have a closing point and the vertex is pointing the opposite way, and it'll give you kind of it'll give you a twist as well. So that's the second thing in the closing point, to make sure that it's in a direction that will work for what you want. Now, I'm just gonna okay this. I've got this built. I'm gonna go in here. Now, I'm gonna go back in here and say, because well, that's actually gonna be later on in the part, but let me unite, I'm gonna take this and say define and work object. Obviously, you need to have another body in here, basically, that subtracts out this piece. Oh, that's the other thing with this. I'll show you that in 1 second. I'll undo this and show you why you need to construct this right to begin with. Because one of the dimensions on the drawing, basically, you have to get that right to get this cut out in the center correct. So I'm gonna just pick these three, and I'm gonna say that I want to assemble them. Okay, so there's my part, and one of the first things I want to check for, hide this, I don't see any of that stuff. In the side view, I want to check to make sure my lines are straight here, that's good, and I should be 1/8 of an inch off the back, 1/8 of an inch off the front. What doesn't look right here is this value, so I wonder if my sketch, this is supposed to be 2 inches long, and this is supposed to be offset 1/8 of an inch. So let me go into this one, into sketch 5, and see what's going on. Oh, I see. It's not 1/8 of an inch at the top. The whole length, so let me delete, where's my offset? Let me delete this. The total length of that in the top from start, so it's 1/8 in the front, and the whole thing is 1.5 long. So I'm gonna come back in here, and the reason the solid's red is because it says, what are you trying to do? So this one's gonna be 1.5. Okay, now I'm gonna bounce out of this, update it, it updates. That's what I was looking for.
What was that you just moved?
Sketch 5, I had it 1/8 of an inch from the front and 1/8 of an inch from the rear. It was actually 1.5 from this to this. That's why it didn't look right when I exited the sketch. But it is definitely 1/8 from the front. This one, so in this view, these two, this is a planar line, or it's a vertical line, and in this one, it's an angular line. And if I go down here now and I say, if I go into the measure command and I say, where is that point, that plane? 0.126. So it's rounding up. It's 0.125, it's going up to 0.126. And I may not have picked exactly in that corner. That's what it needs to be there. And in the front, it needs to be, there we go. Okay, so here's the other thing you gotta look at on this part. So now if I go to this view, if I go to this Y view, if I look at this real close, it looks like this is exactly where it needs to be. And it is, and if you don't build it like I demonstrated, you'll never be tangent with this lower arc or the upper arc. And then when you go to put your fillets in, it's gonna give you a fit. So it's actually part of the construction that you need to do on the park. Let me show you what you need to do for this inside cutout. So now that I'm down here, let me delete these assembles. And I'll go down here to I'm going to insert another body here, and I'm going to call this inside cutout. Okay. Now, for this one, you actually need to sketch. Let me show you where the plane is. So you got to do all this. You got to build this I-beam first, and then you got to come back in here, and that's your sketch plane. Okay. So that edge is your sketch plane, and if I cut that, you can see where it is on the part. And like I said, there's a value in the, there's an actual value that shows up off this lower edge. So, you know, the rest of the geometry has to work for this to work. Turn this off. What I need from this, from the adjacent pieces to build this is, I'm going to hit the control key and I'm going to pick this. I'm going to pick this front face. I'm going to pick this. I'm going to pick this. I'm going to say insert. And I'm going to turn this on. Insert operation 3D geometry. I'm going to intersect those elements. Okay, so you can see what I have there. And I'm going to go into the offset command now. It looks like, let's see, what's the top? No, there isn't one from the top. I'm going to offset this one. Turn this off because these need to be solid lines. This one's going to be offset. Let's see. Do that. This one is, let's see, this one's also going to be, this one's going to be 5/16 in for this one. Oops. Obviously that isn't working. So that's the offset off that one. The one off the back is, that one's also. Okay, and then the total height of this, which is going to be another offset from here, is 1.5. Okay, so there's that shape. I'm not going to put any, there is some fillets in here, but I'm not going to put those, I can actually put those in here. I think these are all 1/4. So these are, if I go into here, I can pick this one, just tab over here. There's the first one. I think the ones at the bottom are also 1/4. So same thing down here. Okay, so there's that shape. Exit this. Uh-oh. Problem with a sketch. All right, let's close this. Let me go back in and look at it. It's probably an element that, 8 curves that are closed.
It's not fully constrained.
Well, it's got, this.
Can't just.
No, it's tangent. It's strange because it's telling me it is
Oh,
constrained.
delete that,
I might have more, I might have some garbage in here.
delete the .31, .313.
That's my offset. Let's see if I have some garbage in here. Some elements that I don't like. These are regular points. Offset 1, offset 2, offset 3. I'm wondering if it's this bottom. I didn't offset the bottom one. Let me close it. When I leave this and I go to build this, offset from phase 22 of pad 1 in sketch plane. So to evaluate the offset from phase 22 of pad 1. All right. So let's close this. Maybe it doesn't like this. Because I've got my, oh, I had my 1.5 in here too, which is right here, it's hard to see. Let me put this one back in. It may not like these ones because they're not isolated, but I've never seen that happen.
Can you make the top line horizontal? In between like this,
That should be an offset, unless, I'm just wondering if there's a little, it's telling me that it's, I'm not sure why these guys are still yellow. Because they're direct offsets. Is there a value missing there? No, it's right there. There's one of them. Those are all good. Here's my other value here. And I'm just trying to figure out why those are still yellow, because they should go green. Let's do this. Let me do this and see if,
looks like the line on the right is, now you're moving this. It looked like it was 2 lines instead of 1.
well, if I go in to delete it, there's one there. There's one here. A lot of times too, you can get this when something isn't trimmed right. Although I did all these fillets and I see the tangencies. So, let me delete this one, this value. I'm not sure why it doesn't, coincidence had something to do with it. Okay, then let me delete these ones. And sometimes when you run into this too, you gotta go back and sometimes isolate these. That's what I just did. And you can see they're changing all to unconstrained, because when you isolate any of those offsets, like you can see this one's still green because it understands where that value is, or it understands this height and it understands this one. So let me see if that had anything to do with it. Let me exit this. No, there's still one in there let me isolate this. Let's see what's going on with this sketch. Anyways, let me go in and show you. Not sure why it would give me that issue, because I've built this a million times the same way. I'm gonna turn this one, if it'll use it, because it's telling me. And it may be, since I bounced out of it and isolated it from the rest of the solid, maybe it says, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. I'm gonna make this into a pocket, if it'll take it. There we go. Mirrored extent, that's what I want. Now, because this gets into the actual filleting of the part. Now I'm gonna go in and say define a work object. I'm gonna pick all these. And I'm gonna assemble it. Okay. Now, this is the part where if for some reason you didn't get this geometry right with the sketches, you'll have issues with this, with the fillets. So let me show you how you start with the fillets on this. They are 0.0625 fillets. So I'm gonna start with this one in the corner, in this one, because I know that the fillet's gonna flow down this surface and come down. And the other thing that you want it, you don't, if I go up here and I say, okay, well, I'm gonna pick this one and this one, say okay. Doesn't like that edge, okay. Let's do this again, let's try this one. Try this one on the back side. Doesn't like that edge. All right, let me do the one on the front. With it giving me an error like that too, I wonder if there's something going on with the sketch. Let me go up here and look at this. Let me go look at my middle section sketch. Sketch 5. I'm just wondering if something pulled off one of the edges. And if I cut that in half, it looks like right here, that may be, there's a coincidence marker there, but I'm not so sure. Let me delete this one, because these are some of the things too. It looks like that edge is off as well. So it doesn't look like it's touching that. So I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna go grab this. I'm gonna grab this one, say coincident. Okay, it's telling me it's over constrained. Do a Control C on this.
1.1.
Oh yeah, there we go. That's locking it out. Because when you go to build this, if you get an error with the fillets, it's basically a pointer saying there's something going on where it transitions into the rest of the part. Because I've assembled this part together right now. So let me pick that, this, coincident. Okay, that moved, and I hope this one looks like it's disconnected. So I'll do that one as well. From here to here, coincident. Okay, that one's lined up. And over here, this one looks good. So I'm gonna exit this. Now, I'll see if this will let me fillet that edge. And you gotta make sure down here too, you don't have something going on like that. So, go back into the fillet command, pick that one, say okay. So now I'm gonna look at the bottom one. Bottom sketch, see if there's anything going on down here. That one looks like it's where it needs to be. Remember, when you're looking down on the bottom one, you're seeing the rest of the shape on the bottom. This one looks like it is off. Even though it's showing me that it's coincident, I'm not so sure why it's doing that. You do a Control Z. I'm gonna back up this sketch. Go here. I wanna see if this one's giving me the same kind of issue on this edge. Okay, so that one runs. That one runs. And let's see if the inners will go. That one's good. Yeah, there's definitely something going on the other side of the part, so it gets hard to see. Let's see about the front edge of this one. Okay, that one went. This was the one where this was the one that was giving me the problem on this side. No, it goes now. That one goes. That's why it's important too that those sketches line up. Okay, so you can see now I've got these defined.
What was the
And
radius for those?
0.0625. And I'm gonna do the ones on the inside again for this one. And the reason that you do those in that order is because when you come back to finish these off, you've built the track for this one to run on. There's that one. And then here's this one at the bottom. And then when you go to tie in, when you go to do the other side, it's the same thing. That one and that one. Okay, so there's those two. Now I'm going to finish off the front and the rear. So there's one underneath here, and there's one at the back. Okay, so the other thing too that I was trying to show you before it wasn't coincident was if you do this one early, or I should say if you go to do this late, so you do this inside fillet right here, and then you're like, well, okay, I'm just gonna fillet this edge. You gotta be careful that the top and the bottom doesn't flare out, so that's why you do it early enough, so it, when you blend this one into it, and this one, these are later, obviously. So you put these four, I'll call them, you got 4 verticals, 1, 2, and then 3, 4 on the other side, and then you do these other ones that are at an angle. Once you have these two, these inside ones developed. That way, these don't pull off and flare out at the top, because they'll flare out and make the part look bigger than it really is. And it also, when you go to measure that in the side view, it would actually mean that if it flares out here, you would say, well, why is it doing that? The thickness of the part right there is 5/16. There's also, with this, there's a fillet there, and there's one here. And remember I said the critical offset was down here, based off where this touches? That's actually the dimension that's in the, or that's on the drawing. All right, before I actually give you the drawings for this and the other ones, OBJ 100 and OBJ 101, questions on this? A lot of details to it, but if you follow some of the sketches, the multi-section solid, it works really good. You just gotta make sure that you got good tangencies, that your sketches are robust enough to build it. And the biggest thing is this setup from this view. Because if you don't do that to begin with, it's not, your chances aren't really good that you're gonna be tangent with any of the fillets. That's the other thing too, if it'll build a fillet for you, but it comes over the top or the bottom, and what I mean by that is, if you look, these end right here, okay, because that's where it becomes tangent. So you'll see some of these parts where you'll see the fillet come up and it'll just curl over the top here and go all the way back to the back. And it's not very big because you're coming in at an angle, but that tells you that the sketch on the upper, and if you have it on the lower, that it's not positioned and it's not coincident in that sketch, or it's not where you've projected those lines into it, it's not coincident with that. Because basically what it's telling you is that thing's a little bit wider than that in that view. So it'll let you put a fillet on it, but it'll also wrap around the top edge, or it'll wrap around the bottom edge if it's not exactly in that sketch and where it needs to end. So it's a good, that's one good thing to go back and look at it visually.
So we gotta chop the bottom of it, blue circle on it.
So the base of this has obviously a hole in it, but look at this. This is that 1/16 I was telling you about. So it's the center for this, but also the bottom of this is 1/16 off that. When you go to build this, this lug as well, there's one on both sides. It tells you it's 3 inches center to center. When you have the bottom cylinder in there, or the half cylinder, or whatever you're gonna build for that, it's just easier, if you're looking at that from the plan view, and this is the cylinder, right, or half the cylinder, it's easier for you to go in here. You know, there's one command in the sketcher that basically builds this shape, and it makes everything tangent, right here and right here, you know, on all these edges. One shape, you can, and you don't have to go back in and do this, you basically just key these values in. It gives you this shape, you have one, you make that one body a pad, and then when you assemble everything together, obviously, this is gonna unite itself to this cylinder, because the holes are at the end, remember. Upper and lower holes are at the end. Because I know I'll see this one early, and if you put it all the way at the end, then you can build this and not have to build two separate pieces. Or you can build one of them here, overbuild it, and then mirror it, right? So there's no reason to not use that in the sketcher to build that piece. Because it's got all the values on it. I think, well, the only thing you have to get is the center to center distance, because it's 5/8 R here and 5/8 over here where it comes off. So all you gotta do is when you get those values plugged in, because it tells you what's the center to center distance, 3. So you come into the sketch and you put this in here, and then you have to, obviously, you'll have your plane here, right? So you could do you'll probably have to do a 1.5 from this. Maybe something like that. So everything's in the model. Actually, with all the planes and everything, it's real easy to dimension that, because you can dimension off of a plane. So I'm gonna email these out, and like I said, the first two are more just practice on pads, pockets, and fillets. This one's probably the meat of all 3 of them. That'll take a little bit more time, but it gives you a good idea of how the multi-section solid works. Let me send this out.